Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends. We welcome you to this webinar where the Black Sash will launch a publication called Basic Income Support, a Case for South Africa. And we will also launch today a petition calling on government to implement permanent social assistance for those between the ages of 18 to 59. But let's first have some house rules, and then we will take you through the program. I will then introduce the subject, and I will also then take you through the first panel's biography in short. So all participants, you have your camera function and your auto function both disabled. If you have questions, please write your question in our Q&A box at the bottom of the screen and then click to send. Thirdly, both the moderators and the speakers will either reply back to you via text in the Q&A window section, or we will choose some of the questions and answer live. As a participant, you can also like and comment on other questions. Click the thumb up icon to like a comment or to question, and click comment to write a reply or to answer an existing question. So our program will be as follows. We will, after this, Angus Sonono will give a presentation of the research report. We will then have questions and answers. And then I will introduce the next speaker, Huda Abrams Fiker. And after Huda's speech, we will launch the petition. And we have with us Daneo from amandla.mobi, who will guide us through that process together with Mutsi Komeno, who will be our first person to sign the petition. So let's start just with as a way of introduction. So the idea of a basic income grant has been discussed in South Africa for almost 20 years. Follow the Taylor Committee's report on a comprehensive system for social security in South Africa, and that report was launched in 2002. We know that Section 27 of the Bill of Rights of the South African Constitution make provision for social security, including appropriate social assistance if they are unable to support themselves. The income support in the form of social grant is provided to approximately 18 million most vulnerable people, the elderly, children, and people with disability. However, able-bodied persons aged 18 to 59 with no or little income are excluded from the social assistance grant provision at the moment. So the South African government must also uphold the United Nations International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which it ratified. The covenant forms the cornerstone of international human rights law. Key recommendations made by the ICSCR are that the South African government must ensure that those between the age of 18 to 59 with little or no income have access to social assistance, consider the possibility of introducing a universal basic income grant, and raise the level of government's social assistance benefit to a level that ensure an adequate standard of living for recipients and their families. The government therefore has a constitutional and an international obligation to ensure that those with no or little income, age 18 to 59, have access to social assistance. We are therefore welcoming you to this seminar and where we will launch the research publication entitled Basic Income Campaign, a Case for South Africa by Angus Sonono. The research publication explores the idea of a universal basic income with international pilots, case studies, and consider the gaps in South Africa's social security and protection framework. It also reviews global social protection measures to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it concludes with making a case for the feasibility of income support in South Africa. And our first speaker is indeed Angus Sanono. Angus has a background in economics and has been active in the sphere of social protection for the past 12 years, focusing on social grants and early childhood development. He was previously employed by the Department of Social Development, and he also worked for international agencies, including the United Nations World Food Programme, Save the Children, South Africa, and UNICEF. Through his work, Angus contributed to the development of social protection policies in countries including Lesotho, Malawi, Swaziland, and South Africa. Through his professional and personal experience, Angus is a committed basic income support activist and encourage more people to join this movement. Without further ado, Angus, the floor is over to you.
Thank you, Lynette, for that wonderful introduction. And welcome everybody to the launch of the report. I hope you've had a good morning and are ready to join us in this afternoon. I'll be doing a quick presentation. I've been told I only have 15 minutes, so I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. Can you guys see the screen?
Yep, we can.
Great. So yeah, once again, welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. So I'll be taking through the presentation, basically highlighting the key aspects of the report that we had done. It has taken us over a year just to get it done. And basically to start off with, just to give you a bit of context of South Africa and the overview of the country's social security system and the case we are making for a basic income support and some policy options that we developed and the most important one, funding mechanisms that we think that this policy. So to start off with, so South Africa is you know, as we all know, has been has a triple challenge, as we call it, of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. The majority of South Africans remain poor 25 years after democracy, since 1994. And if you're using the upper bound poverty line in 2017 terms, you had 52% of South Africans still under that poverty line, which is roughly about 9.5 million. But most worrying is the number of extremely poor people who are still poor in South Africa, which is around 13.8 million South Africans. And if you look at that, the majority of those are between the ages of, well, they are children and adults, 5 years, and 0 to 17-year-old. Gap between 18 to 24, 35 to 35, which doesn't have any social security systems, they still face some adverse effects of the poverty as well, and they don't have any benefit, which we'll speak to. When it comes to inequality, the country has also one of the highest inequalities around the world. Use the Gini coefficient, we are sitting at about 0.63, 0.64. And compared to our counterparts within the BRICS partnerships, Brazil, which is 0.43, China, which is 0.35. These are one of the challenges that we are having it. And that's mostly because in South Africa, the top 10% of the population receives about % of the national income, while the bottom 50% of the population lives less than perhaps 5% of the national income. And if you compare that to your Brazil, India's, even the US, where inequality is much more line or stable than our country was, then no wonder we're having some of the challenges that we are currently experiencing as well. And if you go on to the triple challenge of poverty as well and go to unemployment, our unemployment rate again since the advent of poverty hasn't really declined, and in fact has increased over the from 20% when it was in 1994 till the recent number to 30.7%. Of course, COVID-19 would have had an impact on the recent numbers, but even before that, we were hovering about 27, 28%, which was really hard. To be more specifically, we have about, in our population of 56 million, about 10.8 million of the working population that's unemployed. That's if you're using the expanded definition of unemployment. But if you use the official rate, which is 30%, we're having about 7.1 million people who are still unemployed. These are huge numbers, and as I've said, the impact of COVID, these numbers are likely to be at rate for a while before we can get the economy growing. So in essence, what we have in South Africa is really high levels of unemployment associated with slow economic growth, structural mismatch between labor and demand, high levels of inequality, including racial and gender disparities, high levels of poverty, especially amongst children and the elderly. The SMEs, or as we call them, small micro medium enterprises, have struggled to advance in inclusive and developmental growth. And we have, since the advent of democracy, have, I would argue, some failed macroeconomic policy reforms, including your RDP policy, GEAR, ASGISA, and the NDP, the National Development Plan, which is the Vision 2030 for the country. And mostly because of an inherent belief that the benefit of that growth would reach the poor through trickle-down economy. Hasn't happened, as you'd see, with unemployment, and we've had some good years in the early 2000s where growth was relatively stable, but even then we couldn't get, unemployment or poverty levels to full levels. So if you view South Africa's systems, you have social security systems, you have non-contributory and contributory systems, and within the non-contributory where most of your poor in the country would fall under, you have social assistance and social care or welfare services, and the contributory one is social insurance and active labor. Under that, what we have within the country are your social grants, including your older persons or veterans, child support grants, dependent grants, foster care and disability grants, comprehensive coverage on face value of poor needs. And you have some public work programs and fee waivers, including free basic education and health, as well as subsidies, including your zero-rated food. It's a good thing that we have, and it's been a much appreciated. And without, especially your social grants, poverty levels would have been much higher. But there is a gap within the social grants, in mainly that we don't put within the age 9, unless you are in a foster care up to the age of 21, or you are disabled 18 to 59. Other than that, there is no benefit. The ideal situation, of course, and we are cognizant of that, is that the country should have full employment. But in the absence of that, and in the absence, in the reality that unemployment has in fact been increasing over the past 25 years, there really should be a coverage. Under normal circumstances, an individual is covered from birth till death. Whether you're working or not, you do have, you're working, you have some basics, early childhood care that you can pay for, you have medical aid pay for, and all those type of stuff, and you have insurances to take it through you. And when you retire through what you've contributed, you'll then get some sort of amount. And we are arguing for that, whether you're poor or not, it should be the same for individuals as well, or for individuals in particular. So we have at the moment is free education and school meals. if a child is in schools, there's children social grants or the child support grant in particular, the child up to the age of 18 years, but nothing really kicks in from the age of 18 up to the age of 59. So if you find yourself in an unfortunate situation where you are unemployed and don't have any source of or any income to support yourselves, then there really isn't through until the age of 60. If you're fortunate enough to reach that age, then the system picks up again by way of an older person. So what we are making for is a case for a basic income, in essence for everyone, but also to starting point gap that is there within our social security system. So what is basic income support? In its true form, it's a periodic cash payment unconditionally delivered on an individual basis without means test or work requirement. If you look at around the world, there's been various terms, all taking a variation of it, including guaranteed income, minimum income, universal basic income, or basic income. It's unconditional, meaning that without any requirements, no prerequisites, no stipulations, no special demands, no work requirements, no means testing. Universal, basically for everyone. It's foundational income floor to provide for vital food, clean water, and all the necessities that a human should really have. And it's an income, a monthly amount ensured as a basic income, right? Why do we advocate for it? Well, in essence, the issues and the triple challenges that we've highlighted earlier, basic income can solve for them. Can eliminate poverty, it contributes to equity and social cohesion, and close the gap of income. It's developmental and stimulates growth, as we've seen in some of the pilots that have been run around the world. It can encourages entrepreneurships. It can help offset the negative effects of automation and other changes in the labor market. And in South Africa in particular, is a right as prescribed in Section 27 of the Constitution, which says everyone has the right to have access to sufficient food, water, as well as the right to have access to social security, which, if they are unable to support themselves and their dependents, includes appropriate assistance. So if you look at this graph here against Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the basic income, and its effect on the left-hand side, bottom of there you see poverty traps, and people are essentially living in low wages, having health problems, substance abuse, and other challenges. And once you start introducing things, which we have seen in South Africa, by the way, then they begin to move up the ladder to a level where we want them to be. Freedom of one, from freedom of fear, basically surviving, to the point where basic income needs are met, and they become green productive members of society, and which in effect translates to the country as a whole being a sustainable society and economic progress. And that's what we want. So, but of course, there are common objections, and it really starts with the light ones. We shouldn't, mostly because people are, people lazy, and they won't work once they receive the amount, or the money will spend on alcohol and drugs. You're giving people money for something or for nothing rather, and that it creates a dependency culture. Now we've seen not only in basic income support pilots, but even your common cash transfers programs, which face similar objections. None of these hold true, and there are number of studies to that effect. And once you start producing the evidence, then people tend to move to the notion that it will cost too much, it will cause inflationary ripple effect in communities. People want to unattractive but necessary jobs. And again, it will cost too much, and we'll come to that about funding mechanisms. inflationary. What we've seen again with similar objections transfers, that it's simply not true. And people want to unattractive but necessary jobs. And speaking to the fact that as if it's okay to pay people low wages so that they can do unattractive jobs. For example, garbage collector. And we are agreeing that even with that, there should be a minimum, standard of living that everybody should hold for. Therefore, that job is below the minimum wage in life, then we shouldn't be even advocating for it. Then we move to the we want, fringe idea, or simply no political support. And I think that's where around the world the idea falls short. The lack of political support. We'll talk about it as well. So there has been some results from pilots around the world. Namibia in Africa, Zimbabwe, but as well as across Europe and the Finnish Finland, sorry. We've done the pilot as well in the UK, France, Spain. So it's an idea that's taken shape, and I think countries, especially with the current pandemic, have realized that it's something that is considered and taken seriously. And if you look at the results from those pilots, majority have shown that there's better health and education outcomes. There's been increased economic activity, there's a reduced household poverty and better nutritional outcomes, more savings, less debt, less crimes, reduced reoffending, and most importantly, like I said, isn't the case of an increase in alcohol, drug, or tobacco use necessarily. People get that money. So how much will it cost? The question before we get into the options, I think we need to consider the affordability depends on several factors. One being the size of the BIS, basically the amount of benefit, the growth effects resulting from the improved living standards, the impact on BIS on other government expenditure. So if you have productive members of society who are employed, then there's less crime, there's less expenditure on the other things as well, including health, all those stuff of stuff. Take up rates for BIS and how it will be financed. So those are some of the key factors that we consider into that. So how much does it cost? So we did several costing options. Option A is basically unemployed adults between the ages of 18 to 59. And we've estimated that the recipient would be 4. These are 10.4 before the COVID numbers came out. At a monthly amount of 561, gross cost would about 70. If we were to put, and the 561 is basically the food poverty line in South Africa. And if we were to up that and put it at the upper bound poverty line, then the cost would be around 150 billion. And then there's other options as well, including providing it to every citizen without, test. At 561, that would cost around 303 billion. Option C is sort of like recognizing that we might not be able to start the BIS with everybody, but trying to phase it in ways that we get to the end goal, like to 18 to 35-year-olds, which is about 6 million recipients. At 561, cost about 40 billion. At upper bound poverty line of 1227, it would be which is not a lot of money if we consider all other things. So how can we afford it? The first option would be reprioritization of government expenditure. Second one that we've considered is as you give people money and they tend to spend it on other goods and services. And just by doing that under option A, which is 18 to 35, I think it's option C. Then you get about, get about 4.7 billion money that you would have spent. consumption taxes, which is something to consider as well as probably these luxury goods, ensure full collection of corporate taxes. So there's a Davis committee estimates that the tax rate for corporate is about 10 to 12% instead of the original 28%. And that's simply because government provides a lot of benefits to the effect. And if we just ensure that, you know, that full benefit would get a lot of money as well. Fiscal drag, which in 2018 raised about 8 billion, and Treasury has been happy to utilize that whenever they get money, minimizing illicit financial flows, especially high net worth individuals and the mining sector particularly. There's been estimates that this amount is about 7% of GDP in the country, which is about 300 billion. That alone could fund full BIS if you consider it. Utilizing the UIF or unemployment insurance fund surpluses, increasing carbon taxes, and of course, as you spend money on these people, then government also realizes some long-term savings from reduced governmental costs, health crime. So you begin to recuperate your money back. So we are saying it can be implemented today. If BIS has been, a well-managed program is affordable, consistent with responsibility. There are a variety of funding sources that are available and can be without deficit spending. It has long-term growth implications, support macroeconomic stability and fiscal policy. What we need, as we highlighted in it's the political will essentially. And we have seen through this COVID pandemic, government is willing and they have realized the importance through them providing the COVID-19 grant, albeit for a temporary space, but from that aspect, there is in fact a recognition of a need and a gap, and yeah, we just need political need. How can we make it happen? We need to think big with the end goal in mind, starting small, phased-in approach, but we also move fast, implementing it today so that we ensure that everybody who needs to be covered is covered and we don't delay any further the people. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Angus, for that quick and dirty presentation. I saw on the comments that people were asking whether the presentation will be available. Yes, we will make it available, send it to people who have registered for this webinar, also make it available on our website. The full report is also available on our website and should have been sent to you just by being part of this presentation. Please do some live tweets if you can on the seminar. Let's move forward. And at this point, and also please put your questions for us in the Q&A. We will answer them as we go along. Thank you. I am now going to ask Huda, our National Advocacy Manager. Huda is an attorney with a local and international legal experience. She started her career at the Legal Aid Board. She also worked in the UK for Herbert Smith and Clifford Chance. On a return to South Africa, she managed a LegalWise branch where she expanded her experience. Prior to her engagement as National Advocacy Manager at the Black Sash, she worked as a senior attorney for the Women's Legal Center, advancing women's rights through impact litigation. She holds degrees both at the University of Cape Town and the University of the Western Cape. Huda, without further ado, I'm handing to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Angus. It seems like we have a plan and it is doable. And especially in a country where we have been affected more so by the pandemic. And I'd like to introduce you to the story of Fesibongo, who is from the Eastern Cape. He is 21 years old and has been struggling to find a job before the pandemic. His mom was basically the breadwinner in the family, and she worked as a part-time house cleaner for an elderly couple. She lost a job when the pandemic struck. She wasn't registered for unemployment insurance, but she only cleaned once a month for this elderly couple. So when she lost the job, they were left stranded and basically became beggars over a period of a week. Or even though she worked part-time for this elderly couple, they would also buy groceries for their little family of 3. So without the financial and food support, they are now currently destitute. This is the story of many South Africans at the moment who are struggling to put food on the table and pay for their basic needs. Now we have, in a country that is already economically fragile, facing a humanitarian disaster, the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequality is exacerbated. So what do we do now? The introduction of a basic income grant has gained traction. We initially started with a introduction of social relief measures, where we saw that they recognized the importance of this vulnerable group of 18 to 59 years old by introducing a COVID relief grant, but only for a period of 6 months. The Minister of Social Development also engaged with the basic income grant, saying that it's now being considered, but with the proviso that they need to look at fiscal capabilities. And that it may be a progressive approach where it would look at expanding it slowly, starting with 18 to 24 and those between 50 and 59. So too within civil society, there has been a call that basic income grant or universal basic income is the solution, but although using different approaches on how to get there. So we need to use this opportunity to compel government to act. It is crucial for government to fulfill its constitutional obligation to provide income support for those who cannot support themselves. And they have also ratified the International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, where there's been placed an obligation on government to provide income support for those between 18 and 59 who have no or little income. So Black Stash's strategic approach is to work towards a universal basic income, but in a phased way, so that we look at extending social assistance for those between 18 to 59 who are currently not employed or receiving a little bit of income. And so our demands at the moment is to implement social assistance for those aged 18 to 59, valued at the upper bound poverty line, which is currently 1,227 Rand per month. Caregivers who receive the child support grant must also qualify for this grant. It is also called that we make the COVID-19 increase of $250 a month be permanent for all social grants. And we need to ensure that the above provisions apply to refugees, permanent residents, asylum seekers, and migrant workers with special permits. And so in this way, we will work quickly towards implementing a universal basic income grant and holding our government to task. So we are introducing a petition and we're launching it now, and we would clearly illustrate that this can be done, and we invite you to support our campaign with the launch of our petition, which we invite you to sign online, and to also attend and participate in the discourse that we will be hosting virtually on different platforms, and also participate in Mass Action Plan for October this year. Thank you.
Just unmute. Thank you. They are very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Huda, for that short and punchy presentation. There are some questions. Agnes, can I throw some towards you? First of all, there is David Hollows, who are saying, how do the cost and benefit of a big compare with a full modern national job guarantee program? Maybe you want to take that one. We can also answer later. Then there's Stephen Deverox, who is asking the question, what is the main constraint to the BIS in South Africa? Is it a lack of political will? If so, why? Or is it the challenge of financing? Those are just two questions that I'm going to throw at you right now, Agnes.
Oh. So I think the first one, in the paper we did not do the comparison between the job guarantee schemes versus the BIS. But what we have highlighted is that through government has done a number of initiatives for guarantee schemes. And the argument is that they haven't worked, simply put. You look at the unemployment figures that we highlighted earlier on. None of those initiatives have borne fruit. They always talk about it, and we agree, as with most poor people, that, the key to getting out of poverty is getting proper employment. But in the absence of that, what we're arguing for is a system of support, the basic income grant. So these two can be in parallel while they try to figure out what needs to be done and why those programs are not in the full fruits and hope for. What we are saying is that let's not let people suffer any longer. And coming to Stephen's question as well, it's a tricky one and a bit of both. I would say before this pandemic hit, I would have said it's political will. But through this, pandemic, the government of South Africa introduced with a package of about 50 billion, 6 months COVID relief grant, specifically for people between the ages of 18 to 59. And when you say that, I think they then realized, the political will was there to introduce such an initiative, and suddenly money was found to fund such an initiative. So yes, it's a lack of political will, but historically as well within South Africa, our politicians have been cautioned on the side of grants in general. Most believe that they should be getting something. Most believe that they should be conditions, that they generally don't work as politicians. And I think what jobs at certain center, it put what should have been in place long ago out to the surface. And the argument is, imagine had we had a BIS in place long ago, then people would have been able to better prepare, people would have better be able to take care of themselves, and even gotten some sort of insurance throughout and build up some savings or whatever to ensure that whenever there's a risk such as this happens, then they are taken care of, instead of us now having money and deal with this at the current moment. So it's not a question of funding, because I believe that could be found, but I do also believe that the politicians would ever think that funding is an issue when we could easily fund it from other initiatives as well. Thanks, Lynette.
Agnes, just take one more, and that is
Sure.
Reinhard Haas, and he says, or she says, can Agnes comment whether he would prefer consumption income or wealth tax or sovereign tax to finance the basic income in South Africa? Can he briefly explain his reasons?
So, I mean, we could use a combination of all of them. Reason being, as a country, we've gone through, and I think it's something we are cognizant of. We've gone through some hardships, especially years of non-growth, as we call it, and this pandemic, I think it was a nail in the coffin, in the sense that we're not gonna have much more growth in that. So we do recognize that, we don't necessarily want to put further burden on consumers. But what we are saying is that you do have some high net worth individuals. Of course, I think they have been taxed to the point that we wouldn't be getting much more income from. But even if it's a little amount, it helps. I would say yes, wealth tax, definitely, and it's one of our proposals. If you can afford in this current economic climate to buy a Lamborghini, then I think you should, put yourself aside, and you can also afford to sponsor, a full crop people in the country. Consumption tax, our VAT was raised, and there are zero-rated items which poor mostly consume, but also the poor also consume other items which are quite expensive. So that's not one of the things that we would go for at this moment. And the sovereign money, yeah, of course, we can also consider as well. And what we are saying is, instead of telling to the government, instead of telling us there is no money, let's explore these options together so that we can find middle ground. As you did with the 6-month grant that you found, 50 million to suddenly fund it. I'm sure there can be ways which we can come to the table and negotiate where this money could be found.
Thank you very, very much. And we will certainly get back to you on the questions that you have put in the Q&A. Again, there was a request for the publication. The publication is on our website. You can also send a note to bus@blacksash.org.za to communicate your needs. Both the presentation and the publication will be on our website. I am now moving towards Daneo, who is from amandla.mobi. She is a campaigner there. And her background includes lecturing in theology as well as working in youth and community development. Daneo is driven to see Black women thriving and is committed to interrogating and working out her role, making this a reality. So Daneo, I am passing on to you, who will speak to us briefly about sort of the petition and the launch of that petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. So my role is basically to tell us how we're going to do this. So how are we going to get the basic income grant going, and also how do we get the collective behind this? Sorry. Okay. So firstly, I will explain who we are, who Amandla.mobi is, and why and how we're going to help Black Sash and work with Black Sash to make sure that this becomes a reality. So Amandla.mobi is an independent community advocacy organization that seeks to advance the active citizenry of the people of Mzansi. We use digital technology, but not just that, but we basically believe that we can turn every cell phone into a democracy using tools. And this is where we come in. So we believe in the power of the collective. We believe in the importance of social security for low-income Black women. And we believe that everyone can be an active citizen. And poverty is systemic. So for us as Amandla.mobi, the basic income grant is a logical step, especially given where South Africa finds itself now, dealing with the effects of the COVID pandemic. Moving on to the petition, right? So our petition, together with Black Sash, will be to the Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu, National Treasury, Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, and President Ramaphosa. It will be live. I will share the URL in the end, but it will be on our website. And this is where people can sign the petition, but also share it with others so that they can also sign. Now, Huda and Lynette and Agnes have given very comprehensive motivation for this. So the petition is important because of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we believe that it has become a humanitarian crisis. South Africa's already dire economic situation with the triple challenges of systematic poverty, unemployment, and inequality has become bleaker. And as the others have said, the national lockdown has exacerbated structural unemployment, and people are going hungry. Households in Mzansi are literally going hungry, and we need an intervention that mitigates this. This will be on the petition, so you can go ahead and read through it. Also, we've spoken about the human obligation, but also there's a legal obligation as well, where the Section 27 of the Bill of Rights makes provision for social security, including appropriate social assistance if they are unable to provide for themselves. The income support in the form of social grants is provided to approximately 18 million of the most vulnerable, the elderly, children, and people with disabilities. However, able-bodied people aged between 18 and 59 with no or little income are excluded from the social assistance grant. And this is where we see the basic income support, this particular basic income support filling in the gap. Also, the South African government must uphold the United Nations International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which it ratified. The covenant forms the cornerstone of international human rights law. Key recommendations made are that the South African government must ensure that those between the ages of 18 and 59 with little or no income have access to social assistance. Consider the possibility of introducing a universal basic income grant and raise the level of government social assistance benefits to ensure an adequate standard of living for recipients and their families. Huda has taken us through the demands. So the petition will have 4 demands. The demands will be to implement permanent social assistance for those aged 18 to 59, valued at the upper bound poverty line, including caregivers. They must make the COVID-19 grant increases of 250 per month permanent for all social grants. Ensure that the above provisions apply to refugees, permanent residents, asylum seekers, and migrant workers, and work towards universal basic income. And we've said before why this is important. Another important thing is that this petition and this campaign is endorsed by other groups, which we value highly partnerships with, including the Alternative Information and Development Center, the BESA Center for Social Innovation, and the Entrepreneurship Graduate School of Business, the Botshabelo Unemployment Movement, Cancer Alliance, Center for Applied Legal Studies, Children in Distress, the Dula Umar Institute, the Environmental Monitoring Gap, Institute for Poverty, Land Agrarian Studies at the University of Western Cape, Organize for Work, probono.org, Public Health Movement, Public Service Accountability Monitor, and Right to Know. Calabrini, Section 27, Sexual and Reproductive Justice Coalition, Siasuba Feminist Collective, Social Assistance Trust, the South African Domestic Services and Allied Workers Union, South African NGO Coalition, the South African Society Social Policy Research Institute, the Triangle Project, Women on Farms Project, and as Amanda.Morgi. Now, to see the petition in action, we are going to have one of our partners sign the petition, and so that you can see how it will look like when you go onto this website, which is what you will use to sign the petition.
Right, we are at this stage calling on Mutsi, who is from the unemployment movement. He operates from the Free State, and Mutsi is going to sign the petition on behalf of the unemployment movement.
Comrade Lynette, you have opened it well. Why can't you open it again then?
Must I open it again? What must I do, right?
Let me try. Please bear with me.
There you go. Right, well done.
I'm trying my level best. I don't know. Amandla.
There we go. At the end.
Please bear with me. Where am I now? Hey, I can't even open my screen here. Is it okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Go down.
But you can't see me. But where is the...
We can see it. Okay, right. Danaya, will you just give him some direction there, please?
Yeah, please assist here, because I don't see the space where I should sign here. Comrade Lynette, assist here.
Yeah. I'm
I've
asking
shared
Danaya.
the link. Yes, so I've shared the link with you privately, Ernest, the one that you must go into.
Mutsi, just see the private
It's
link.
the hours. Yes.
Come again.
I've shared the link that you must use, not the Amandla one, use the Aweti one, but I've shared it with you privately.
Yeah, but I need it on my screen. You know, I've gone before this.
Okay.
Can't you
Mutsi,
assist me?
Unfortunately,
go back to entering. Go back to the enter sign where you started.
Okay.
Okay. You will see there's a whole lot of, yeah, just go back there. Type in amandla.mobi. Right, which one? Go to the last one, second last one. You will say,
The
see, basic income
income.
support for people now.
Yes.
Use that one, right? You should get onto that site.
Oh, yes.
There we go.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, really.
No,
I'm very,
don't
very...
worry. Don't worry. We all can make that mistake. Okay, so please register the first one. You are one of 7. Put in your details and let's see what happens. Okay. I think your first name must go in there and your last name is your surname.
Yes. I'm just doing that.
Email address. Yep.
There I am. Now I'm signing.
Yes.
Just click in there.
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
asking you to ask your friends and your family to sign on, but you have just registered a couple of minutes ago. So there you are, 2 minutes ago. Thank you, Mutsi.
Yeah.
Well done. Really
Thank you very
appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Huda, is there another one that you want to share with us on the screen, please, from the Eastern Cape?
Now, I think that's all for now, Lynette. Thank you.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I see that the questions have now grown to 19. We will certainly make our way through these questions and try and respond to them. But let's just encourage everybody to do two things. First of all, it's not late for your organization to join the campaign. Please let us know through the BIS email address if you want to do so. We can certainly still put the name of your organization onto the amandla.mobi list, and we will continue to add to that list because we also want to grow the number of people, of organizations that join the campaign. Secondly, please, in your networks, encourage as many people as possible to sign the petition online. In some of the areas, we will also have kind of signed hand petitions. Our monitors working in various areas where it's available. If you are unable to do online registration, please, you can get a copy from us for a signed petition, and there will also be contact details as to where you can send that signed petition, because it's very important that we get as many people as possible to sign for these specific demands. And without further ado, to say thank you very much to Engenis, to Deneo, to Huda, to Motsi, for all your inputs into the session. Thank you very much for the technical team, Ernest, Shanaz, Esley, and I think Koliwe. And last but not least, to say thank you very much for the people who have signed in today for the webinar and who has taken the time for a whole hour to be with us and to engage on this very important subject. And please note that the documents will be available on our website. Without further ado, thank you so much and goodbye.